welcome back. Welcome back to part 4 of my marble disc video series. So if you haven't seen the others before this, just to bring up to speed, what I'm doing is I'm making an ornamental marble disc or plate that for display purposes is decorative. So this is the kind of thing that you might display on an iron post or a stand, or it might be on some kind of a holder. But this is designed to be in display in a a fine residence, maybe in a dining room or a living room, kind of thing that just it catches the light, adds a bit of conversational interest, and gives kind of an impression of it being an ancient relic, so to speak, or some kind of a fine antique. And I like the idea of these kinds of things because a lot of people have desires to have such things, but to purchase the real deal is next to impossible. So that's the concept of this. And what I intend to have is some kind of a carved motif. I still actually haven't made up my mind yet. Some kind of a carved motif, but it won't be carved out of this, which is this is a gray Carrara marble. So the center is actually going to be reduced, and it's going to have an applied onyx motif, something decorative in the middle, and then it's also going to have an onyx or a pink onyx edging all the way around that will be applied. And as of most recent, my thought is that I'm still debating about this, but I think that just to give it a little bit more depth and interest, I might actually chase out a niche or a trough and do. I've been throwing around different ideas, and I'm one of the ideas that I thought, and it's might be very interesting, is to do some applied onyx lacework out of the pink onyx, or it'd be like a Celtic knotwork. I guess lacework doesn't really explain things, but it'd be like a Celtic knotwork done in sections, probably 2 sections per quarter. So each one would be a complete movement, interlacing. So that's an interesting idea. It'd be time consuming because I'd have to empty out all of the lights in the center of the knotwork. If you're familiar with Celtic knotwork, it's most commonly seen on Celtic headstones. Be probably the most common public place that you'd see. But many Celtic, even coats of arms, will often have knotwork, and it's a stylized form of knotwork that it's like a twisted rope or knot. So that's a very interesting idea, and be very kind of old world feel to it. So I might just do that. I think that would be so. Anyways, stunning. That's the status, and I just wanted to start this off and keep going. Okay, so I have those fabulous dividers that I showed you in the last video, and so I'm going to use these. I keep these sharpened up so I can actually use them as a scribe and a compass. That's the nice thing about stone, is you can draw on it with a pencil, but you can also scrape into it, and if you scrape into it, then that line becomes the official line that you cut to. We call that a scribed line. So as you can see, I've decided to go ahead with the recess. So I think it'll add a visual interest. I can just imagine. So this recess will be square cut, and I'll sink that in probably 3/16 of an inch to a quarter to allow for the onyx to sit in, and then the onyx will project, I'd say, just proud of the surface. And what I'll do is I'll pre-shape the pieces, epoxy them in. So I'll drop the term that they use for the holes in the middle of open rope work or lace work is called a light. So when I use the term dropping the lights, that's what I'm referring to. And so if I was to illustrate that for visual purposes, so let's just say that I have a knot comes around like that, and it's just for argument's sake. So this area here is referred to as a light. So when I use the term dropping the light, that means removing the waste in the center of these areas, and that's the term that we use for carving. So as a stone cutter, I served much of my apprenticeship doing tasks for my boss Robert. So if he was doing a large carving, my job would be to drop the lights and to a specified depth, and that would entail cutting that line and then dropping it down square to that designated depth, and then also the areas on the outside. So these would also be, if this was in a closed field, that would be a light as well. So dropping the lights, it just refers to removing that stone, leaving this area as proud. And then the next stage after that would be doing the unders and overs. So if this is a rope, you're going to have an under and an over. So this gets dropped down, this gets dropped down, this goes over, and then this gets brought into a sweep. So this would be a low point, this would be a lower point. So it'd be like a bridge over a highway, if you could imagine that in the visual context. So that's what they refer to as the unders and overs of roping or of lace work. And they'll be divided up into 2 sets per quarter. So they'll be closed. So there'll be a full loop. So each end will be looped, and it'll be in a stylized form. I have to lay that out first. Start with reducing the square cut recess as the next stage. So here we go. And I can say that I certainly hope that this looks good after all this. It's one thing to have an idea that you're making on your own, and if it doesn't work out, it's fine, nobody sees it. But when you're making it publicly and showing it to people live as you're making decisions, you certainly hope that the end result actually works out and isn't hideous. That would be a bit embarrassing. It would be interesting content, though. So in stone cutting, everything is always started out with using what's called a chamfer, a V-cut. The whole practice of stone cutting is divided up into a series of checks and chamfers. The checks are square sinkings, and they're usually sunk in to establish continuous lines. Chamfers are essentially a tangent. So if you have a curved surface, the curved surface is essentially shaped out of multiple tangents, and then the ridges in between them is softened off, and if you keep on reducing the tangent with another tangent, eventually it becomes a curve, if that makes any sense. Anyways, I'll definitely show you along the way. If you want to see a really high quality stone cutter do his work, I'd highly suggest Main Stone Carving. He's somebody that I've been following for a while, and does top-notch work. So he's definitely worth a follow. And I've seen a lot of shops over the years, not necessarily on YouTube, but I can say without a doubt he was trained extremely well. And his work is really clean. So yeah, he's a much better explainer of the principles of and practice of shaping stone in a much more watchable and energetic form than I could ever be. So yeah, give him a follow. Okay, so as you can see, I am a little bit further along. I wanted to just get a little bit done so that I can show. But as you can see, it's getting deeper. This isn't at its fullest final depth yet, but it's roughed out. I'll probably possibly deepen that by half, so twice the depth that it is right now. But as you can see, it's started out, and what I'll do is I'll do the same. I'll get everything established all the way around. I'll go all the way around, and then what I'm using is the punch that I talked about in the last video that I tempered, and I've been using that just to lightly remove the first bit of waste in between the V-cuts. It's a very effective tool that it's a controlled way of removing the waste. They're an ancient design. They've been used, and they're used in various forms all around the world, because the earliest forms would have been out of a hard stone. They would have used points of stone that were harder than the material that they were working, and they would have spar picked it to remove most of the waste. So this, and you can make them in any size you want. There's no rules there. So you can have a shaft that's 1 inch, or you can have a shaft that's a 1/8 of an inch. And we have all of those. They all serve their own purpose. And then for the next stage is I'll use the pull nose just to mull off the crowns of these I don't know if you call them, like furrows. I guess you could. They remind me of a plowed field. That's what I think of when I see that. This is just a controlled way of reducing the surface. And it's not the only way, but it works. This is the onyx. If you haven't seen my other videos on the onyx lamp project, and it's a very translucent crystal that I intend to. These are just little pieces, but I intend to use this as the inlay. So this is what I will make the lace work out of. Obviously, it'll be reduced in thickness once it's inset, but I think that it's an interesting contrast. It's very subtle between the pink and the gray. I thought it was an interesting idea. And one of the things you can do to enhance the material, if you want it to intensify the color, you can actually colorize the epoxy, tint it just slightly, so that it intensifies the color. If you add a more intense color in behind it, a pink or a red, I don't know if you can see the difference between, but it's so translucent that it actually picks up the color right in behind it. So if you color with set it into a colored epoxy, it'll actually intensify the color. So that's something that I may do if I feel that it's a little bit too washed out and it's not strong enough to contrast. I may add a little bit of pink to the epoxy in behind, just to bring the color up a bit. But that's a shh, don't tell anyone, that's a secret. These are the things that industry doesn't normally tell people. But you're hearing it from, well, you didn't hear it from me. Let's say it that way. Okay. Anyways, see you next day.